Welcome to episode 101 of the Ski Podcast, and thanks for joining us, listener. Today, we're going to be finding out about skiing in Greece and what on earth frontside skis are. My name is Iain Martin. I'd like to introduce my guest today. I'm delighted to welcome first-timer to the podcast, Gemma Bowes. Hi, Gemma. How are you?
Hello. I'm good. Thank you, Iain.
Excellent. Yeah. Whereabouts are you just now?
I'm in London, southeast London in Dulwich. So I've been working at the Times newspaper all week this week. This is my day at home, catch up with some freelance work.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much for giving us your time today. And we're also joined today by regular guest and our equipment expert, Al Morgan from skikitinfo.com. Hi, Al. How are you?
Hi, Iain. I am great. Yeah, it's great to be here.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you on the show. Well, let's start by asking our traditional question, when were you last on snow? Gemma, what about yourself? When were you last skiing?
Well, last on snow, technically in the summer, I was in Chavinia hiking and I did put my foot on a tiny bit of snow. But
that counts.
But the last big trip was last Easter. I went to the Haute Marion Valley in France for the whole 2-week holiday with my kids. But we did a bit of a tour around. We were in Cenis, which is the main resort there, very good for children, lots of fun features for them. And then we also went up the valley to Bonneville-sur-Arc. I don't know if you guys know that place, but it's a very different feel, very small village. You almost feel like you're in the Himalayas. You feel like you're right at the top of the mountains.
Right.
Beautiful place. Like on the way up there, we saw a lammergeier, those rare, absolutely enormous birds floating above us in the sky. So it felt quite different to your normal sort of ski trip.
Wonderful. Is this the valley that Modan is on?
I'm not sure if that's one. There's a lot of different resorts there. I think there's 12 different resorts. One of them was where I'd actually done my first ever ski trip as a kid, Val Frejus. So I went back there the first time in almost 40 years. I don't think it's changed much. Seemed pretty undeveloped. And also next to there, there's a tiny resort called La Norma, which is becoming sort of a centre of splitboarding, which I'm a snowboarder, actually, not a skier anymore. Skiing now and again if I have to. But so I went out splitboarding there, and they're going to host the first splitboarding festival in the Alps, I think, this year.
Excellent. I had a quick look on the map. It is Modan, and then you continue through to Alpini and those resorts. And it's interesting to me because I'm planning in December to take the train to Modan and then to go to Arel. And Arel is that fourth valley of the three valleys, and then to go over the top on the new lift, which they're basically converting it at the top of the Cime de Caron so that peatons can go over carrying your bags. So I'm going to ski over, stay over on the Arel side, then take all my kit up and down the other side and go into VT. And the trains are meant to be a bit better to Modan, so I'll be reporting on that at some point later on. Al, what about yourself? Last skiing experience?
I think mine may be similar to yours. That mine was at Hemel Snow Centre. I'm in southwest London, so actually, that's really convenient. So I love.
And when was that?
That was only around 10 days ago. So not. We almost bumped into each other. It's just a few days apart.
We did, because as you observe, I was in Hemel Hempstead at the Snow Centre earlier this week, which I'll mention later. Like yourself, Gemma, I did have my feet on snow when I was in Zermatt about 3-4 weeks ago. I did go up to the Climb Matterhorn Glacier Paradise. Unfortunately, skiing was closed to the public then, but I'm delighted to say that skiing has now opened again as of last Tuesday on the glacier there, because there's a little bit of September snow. Certainly enough that they've been able to open it. Now, that actually does lead me on to my next section, because this is our first regular episode for 5 weeks. Been very busy in the last month or so, but subscribers will be very aware of that. I published 4 special episodes. We had an interview with Warren Smith, chap I've known, a lot of people know in the industry. I've known him for 20 years. Really, really enjoyed talking to him. Helen Coffey, who you might know, Gemma, travel editor at The Independent, about her flight-free stance. And also an episode about speed opening, which is the Zermatt downhill race, which is coming up in around a month's time, where I had the opportunity to interview Permin Zabrigan as well, which is very exciting to me, the famous downhill racer for me, back in the 80s. And also I published episode 100. We're just going into the 6th year of the podcast at the moment. And in episode 100, I look back at the history of the podcast and some of my favorite episodes and features in there. Now, Jules, a listener, did contact me and say, how can it be that was episode 100 when you've had over 150? And I think early on, the way the kind of taxonomy of that worked was we have regular episodes like this one today where we have Gemma and Al as guests, and special episodes. And maybe that's a bit confusing, so I'm gonna redo them from now on. But they are all well worth a listen. You can find them on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you download your podcasts. And if you have listened to episode 100, listener, you'll have heard our big news that from this episode onwards, Les Trois Vallées is now our main sponsor. And I'd like to thank Switzerland Tourism for their support. I really enjoyed discovering Switzerland and sharing the destination. But after 3 years, we mutually decided it was time for change. And I'm very excited that Three Valleys has come on board as our new partner. Many listeners will already be aware of the Three Valleys. It's the largest ski area in the world. World-class resorts like Courchevel, Mirabeau and Val Thorens. But what I'm hoping to do in the podcast is, to go behind the scenes a little bit and bring you some of the stories you might have missed. And actually, one I just want to kind of bring to the fore today. I blogged on this on the skiflightfree.org website, but really interested to see some new solar panels that have gone in onto the Cenis Express lift, which goes up from Mirabeau to Cenis, and they're on the mid station. Solar panels are becoming more common being put onto lift stations, but this one is really interesting because they have panels on both sides. So the 90% of the power will be supplied solar through the sun's rays. But they also use, and I had to Google this, the albedo effect, which is the reflection from the snow back onto the underside, which generates extra electricity as well. So listen, if you're interested in that, have a look at a Ski Flight Free. Right. I would like to bring you into the conversation, Gemma, if I could. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is I read an article a while ago about a trip that you took to Greece. And I love talking to people about, different destinations that are a little bit off the beaten track. I wonder, firstly, where you went and why you chose to go there.
Okay, well, this was just before COVID. I went to a resort called Parnassus, which is 2 hours north of Athens. So that's Greece's biggest resort. I don't think people realise a lot of the time that Greece does have 24 ski resorts. We think of it as a country full of beaches for relaxing in the summer, swimming, but actually they see it largely as a country of mountains. The mainland is very mountainous, as well as some of the islands, of course. But so I think I had an invitation, because I'm a travel writer, you do lots of invitations to unusual things to do. The Greek Tourist Board were trying to promote skiing there to the British market a couple of years ago. And I'm always interested to try and find a different kind of ski trip, because like you guys, have been skiing all my life. After a bit, all of your ski holidays can start to feel a bit samey, can't they? Just same slopes, same band show. But I like occasionally doing a bit of a different ski trip. So I thought I'll see what skiing in Greece is like. One of the best things about it, part of the reason I chose it was for a February half-term trip. And I've got 2 little kids, trying to teach them to ski. But going at that time of year is really, really expensive, as I'm sure anyone with kids knows. Can cost you a fortune, but Greece is a budget option. So I had a quick look, actually, just before coming on here at the flight costs. And to fly to Athens for February half term, the flights at the moment are still 110 quid. But to Geneva, the cheapest I could find was 400 on Skyscanner, same dates. And the same applies for everything there. So accommodation. We stayed in a beautiful hotel just outside where the main ski resort is. Not far, just a little drive up the hill. And I think it was, even though we booked it maybe a week before, the rooms, they're like big villas with 3 double bedrooms. I think it was 200 quid a night. You imagine this kind of place. It had a big swimming pool, a spa. We had our own house with balconies, roaring log fire. I mean, in Val d'Isère somewhere, that would cost you 10 grand probably, wouldn't it? At least for February half.
For sure. It sounds very nice. Could I actually ask a question there? Or not really a question, it's just an observation that, I'm always interested in places where you can take your family at half term for better value. And what you observe there about the flights to Athens being much less than the flights to Geneva. I've seen the same thing in relation to, I took the family to the French Pyrenees at half term 1 year. And the same sort of thing, flying to Toulouse, the same time, I think at that point, because we booked it relatively late, it was even more than that to Geneva. It was like £800 a flight. Yet you could still fly to Toulouse for what you might term a normal sort of price. And I think looking outside the box, as you have there, just does make, all of this a little bit more affordable. I'm not sure so many people would, as you said, would have considered Greece. 24 ski resorts is amazing. Was it Parnassos that you went to?
Parnassos, that's seen as the main ones.
And what size is Parnassos in terms of number of piece?
Well, I mean, that's the catch. It's not massive. It's not the Trois Vallées, that's for sure. I think there's 22 runs, 16 lifts. It's a bit basic. You go there for an adventure and a different sort of ski trip. I don't think you want to go for your main ski holiday of the year if you're a very keen skier. But what it gives you is a lot of fun. You get to do, a good few hours of skiing in the morning. So we would get up, drive up to the resort, maybe 15-minute drive, get on the slopes, do a good few runs with the kids. They're fun slopes, you can speed along. There's a couple of parks, but it's not a massive ski area. But for us, we were skiing with our kids. They can only do a couple of hours a day. They had a lesson there. The lessons were brilliant. I really loved the guy. And one of the best things is that it was sunny and warm. So the conditions were like you would get at Easter, which for families is brilliant in February when the cold weather in the Alps could put a lot of people off.
Okay. Sorry, how old are your children, Gemma?
I think when we went there, they were about 6 and 3.
Yeah, you don't need to have a huge ski area if you are doing a family ski holiday like that. I mean, you mentioned the temperature, and that's lovely being warm. What was the snow like? What was the snow coverage like?
It was good spring snow. There was still decent snow. It was soft, but that's good again for kids. It's not too icy. I think they do have some amazing backcountry terrain there, so I'd like to go back when there'd been a big dump, because I think you could go into the backcountry from the top of the lifts, and that would be amazing. The views are incredible. I think you can see Mount Olympus, all this brilliant scenery. But for us, the skiing was a little part of it. We were really going on a bit of a cultural adventure. So at the end of the ski day, we might finish at lunch or a bit later in the afternoon. Then you drive down to this little village not far away called Arkova, which in Greece is known as the cold Mykonos.
Meaning it's full of Premiership footballers on a week off.
It's a bit shishi. There's lots of après ski bars. I think basically the Athenians, they like to appear to be skiing, but they spend most of their time in the bars down the road. Quite glamorous.
Well, that's good because it means the slopes are empty, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you just got to wait for them to do their 2 runs and go away. But then a good thing is you can go to all these amazing restaurants. You can be having calamari for your après ski meal, kebabs, stuff that kids will actually eat who don't like to do.
Yeah.
And then one of the most amazing things we did there was drive down to Delphi, which is not very far away, which, as you might know, is one of Greece's most incredible ancient UNESCO sites, home to the Oracle. And I think in the summer it would be packed with crowds.
Yeah.
But at that time of year, it was empty. We had it to ourselves. It's surrounded by olive trees. It felt like summer. We were wearing T-shirts, having ice creams.
And how did you get on, taking your young children around, historical monument? Mine haven't always been as keen on that sort of thing.
Yeah, you've got to find the things that interest them. So when we said, people used to come here to ask their futures, they were going up to the special stone that was part of the oracle, asking it if they were going to be allowed ice cream that day. And it turned out they were.
Excellent. And sorry, how far is Parnassos from Athens, where I guess you flew into?
I think it's a 2-hour drive, but it's an enjoyable drive. You're going through typical Greek sort of rugged scenery with olive trees. There are places to stop. So whereas in the Alps, you might stop at your cozy little wooden cafe or some tacky shops. Here we went to a honey centre where we got to do a honey tasting, not your normal wine tasting or cheese tasting. And also to add then at the end of it, which I would recommend doing, we stopped in Athens for a couple of days at the end of the trip. So we did.
Right.
It's a good holiday idea if you want a really mixed bag, a bit of skiing, a bit of sightseeing, and then add on 2 or 3 days in Athens, which at that time of year is really quiet. You can go to the Parthenon, there's no one there.
It sounds fantastic, and I really do like, as I say, that thinking outside the box. I know you've skied in lots of places. Have you ever skied over in Greece?
No, I haven't, which is a real shame. That, you know what? There's just some amazing locations around the world, and I love hearing about these different little ski hills. So yeah, how cool would that be, having a trip over there to go skiing?
Yeah, sometimes while the Three Valleys is obviously the world's largest ski area, sometimes size isn't everything, isn't it? And you can have a great holiday in a smaller area. Your kids are a bit older now. Do you think you would take them back there, or would you feel that you've done Greece now and you're looking for other destinations to take them to?
Yeah, maybe. I think I'd be interested to see what some of the other resorts there are like. And like I say, I'd love to do a bit more of the off-piste, to have a look into the backcountry. But I do always like looking for these new adventures. So a few similar things we've done before. I've been skiing in Turkey 10 years ago, so it may have changed.
Absolutely. I'm sure it's changed since then. Excellent. Well, that's brilliant, Gemma. Thanks for sharing that with us. It would have fitted in perfectly, actually, to our slot at the National Snow Show at the NEC next month. Listener, you might know that the Ski Podcast is going to be live on the Saturday, and we're going to be discussing off the beaten track. We won't be covering Greece, but we will look at Morocco, Turkey, got regular guest Mike Richards on, Albania and Kazakhstan as well. So if you want to come along to the NEC, that's at midday on Saturday, the 15th of October. And then on Sunday, the 16th, I'm doing a presentation about driving electric vehicles to the Alps and around the Alps. That trip to Zermatt that I did about a month ago, I went out in a Tesla, and it was a extremely good experience. So I'm looking forward to sharing that. So if you want to come along and ask your questions, and I'm always keen to meet our listeners face to face, then look forward to seeing you there. The National Snow Show is the third of 3 big events over a month for the ski industry in the UK. Last week, I was at an event called Ski Launch, which is an industry event in London. I was helping to organise the forum there, and we had some really good panels. We had Valterens talking about social media. They've got 99,000 followers on TikTok. A year ago, they had 2,000. And that was really interesting, listening to them talking about how they've developed that. We had a really good chat about sustainability. We had Helen Coffey, who I mentioned earlier, Chemi Alcott, who is cutting down on the amount of clothes she's buying. Well, in fact, not buying any new clothes at all for the coming year. And had Patrick Arnaud, who is the director of Serre Chevalier, and they have very, very high sustainability threshold. It was really interesting to hear him talk about what they were doing. And we had a discussion about bringing people into the industry as well. I did a little presentation about future technology in ski. And then earlier this week, Al mentioned the Snow Centre, where I was at Listex, where I was hosting another panel on sustainability. But while I was there, I found the time to catch up with James Gambrell from the Ski Club of Great Britain, because he presented some findings from their most recent industry survey. Great. I'm here with James Gambrell, General Manager of the Ski Club of Great Britain, and we're currently sitting in a kind of side room at the Snow Centre at Hemel Hempstead, where Listex is taking place at the moment. And it's an industry event. And yesterday you did a really interesting presentation all about, I think the data was the state of the snow sports market. I wondered if you'd like to give us what you thought were the key findings from that.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So we did a survey over the last couple of weeks in partnership with Snow and Rock and Mountain Trade Network. So obviously what we're looking at the moment is intent. We're looking at, what are skiers and snowboarders telling us they're going to do next season. So, it's not the same as data. It's not telling us what's happened. It's telling us, what might happen. Historically, it tracks pretty accurately, but it also gives us a snapshot into the side of the mindset of skiers and snowboarders at the moment. So overall, it was pretty positive. So last year, 86% of the UK market went skiing. So this is, when I say 86% of the UK market, this is based on regular skiers. So people who skied at least twice in the 3 years before the COVID.
Okay, so when they're completed, they identify themselves as regular skiers first. Then you say to them, are you planning to go this winter?
Yeah, so we filter the data on that. So out of that sort of cohort of regular UK skiers, last year 86% went skiing. This year, 94% say they plan to go skiing. Now that number, as I say, might change a bit, but actually it looks pretty positive. And in terms of the reasons for those that are saying they won't go skiing this year, obviously this time last year, the overriding reason, of course, was COVID. Now COVID has dropped down to not a particularly significant factor. For those who won't go, the most important factor, maybe unsurprisingly, is cost.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's quite interesting. So you're suggesting that potentially we're looking at a growth, in terms of the number of people going skiing this winter could be, 10 to 15% more than it was last winter, which makes a lot of sense. And also your survey last winter or autumn was taken prior to the season. And I think a lot of people probably intended to ski and maybe decided not to because of the difficulty with vaccine passes and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But you mentioned I don't know if it's the elephant in the room, the cost side of things. We have a cost of living crisis at the moment. Did you see anything from the data that suggests people are looking to compromise and try and save money on their ski holidays?
Yeah, I mean there was some interesting insights. I think always with these surveys, it's about asking lots of questions, maybe from different angles around a topic, to try and understand people's people's motivations. And so some of the interesting takings were, in terms of quality of accommodation, so that was a factor that went up quite steeply during COVID. There was a sort of this flight to luxury idea that people wanted a high quality accommodation. That hasn't changed. The most popular choice of accommodation for UK skiers remains 4-star hotels. So, we are looking at a market that wants to go and have a fairly upmarket accommodation experience. However, we did see some signs that there are ways that British skiers are looking to save money this year. Notably, the number of people planning to travel at February half term is quite significantly less. Now, of course, February half term for most people is the most expensive week of the season. So it looks like there's a move from families. We don't know yet whether those percentage of people who aren't going to travel, maybe some of them are families, but it looks like families are looking at ways to save money by traveling at a different time of year. So I think that's a factor. There's also a slight reduction in the number of people who take more than one ski holiday. So interestingly, when we did some surveys pre-COVID, we found that 50% of the UK market actually take 2 or more ski holidays a year. Looks like there's going to be a slight reduction in that. So there might be more people going skiing, might be slightly less actual ski holidays booked. But there did seem to be a slight increase in the length of stay. So it may be that some people who used to do, 2-week-long holidays this year might do a 2-week holiday, which obviously saves the money on flights and everything. So I think UK skiers are looking for ways to save money, but ideally not by compromising on the quality of the holiday, but by looking at other ways that they can make a saving.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that's really interesting too. Finally, just on all of that data in the snow sports market, I noticed we've just had a panel about sustainability here. Always really interesting and provokes a lot of discussions. You did see some changes in responses in relation to sustainability and how important it is to people when they're making their decisions about holidays.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we try and ask different questions around this to try and understand how it's impacting exactly those key decisions that skiers are making. So one of the questions we asked was, how significantly would a resort sustainability policy impact your choice of resort? So, when you're considering which resort to go to, are you looking at their sustainability policy as part of that decision-making process? How important is that? Now, almost 30% said it was very important to them. So there does seem to be a significant chunk of the UK market for whom that sustainability policy is important. Only 5% said it wasn't important at all. And I think the other significant about that answer is that it's a significant increase from even just 3 years ago when that number was about 10%. So it does seem that it's something that's getting into ski.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's something that came out in the panel this afternoon in all sorts of different angles, whether it's people choosing not to take flights or choosing to have pre-loved clothing rather than buying new clothing is a trend that is gathering momentum and making a difference. That's really interesting to hear. And I think you do the survey a couple of times a year. So at the next Listex, we'll get an update and see what happened this winter. But, really interesting data. That's excellent. Thanks very much, James.
Pleasure.
So, Gemma, we heard James saying there that fewer people are thinking about travelling at February half term relative to previous years, possibly linked to the cost of living crisis. I mean, I know, we've all maybe tried to take a family away at February half term. It can be shockingly expensive. Do you think maybe there'd be interest in other areas that are less expensive, like Greece or the Pyrenees, etc.?
Yeah, I think it's a really good time to do something different. I mean, possibly if you can afford it, you might go on a bigger trip at Easter as well. But February is definitely the time to shop around and find a cheaper option. For example, last winter, we took our kids away in February half term, but we went to Austria and we flew to Memmingen in Germany, but the flights there were much cheaper.
Okay, yeah, another way of getting around it. You know, I have very rarely taken our family away at February half term just because it typically is more expensive. Regular listeners will know when we did that trip to the Pyrenees, that was good value. We actually went out to Crans-Montana in Switzerland in February half term of this year, principally because they weren't double vaccinated and it was the only place we could go where we could be comfortable they get in. It cost a lot, but it was a fantastic holiday. Al, I know you normally take your kids away at Easter. Have you ever been away as a family in half term?
No, we avoid it, and cost is one factor, and just how busy the resorts are. I've worked out in France, so when you were talking about Orel before, on the other side of the Maurienne Valley, I spent a whole season over there, you know, was around all of that area at half term, and it can just be crazily busy. So for the kind of skiing that we want to do, Easter is great value, fantastic conditions, so that works really well for us.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting, you know, how busy. I was sort of expecting it to be busy in Crans-Montana in half term, but it wasn't the case at all. Now, maybe that's the Valais and Switzerland, and they have other holidays. I've also worked seasons, you know, out in the French Tarentaise, and that can be pretty busy. It was more of an issue as working as a tour operator, being the rep, and, you know, getting to and from the resort on a Saturday when there's such a huge volume of cars going in and out the whole time, particularly if it was combined with really bad weather. When it could take you hours to get to the airport. But, you know, those are all really good points. Now, Al, I wanted to, it's great to have you back on the show. You were last on episode 96. Now, I know you've been doing a huge amount of work on all the new kit coming up and being released. This is the time when it starts to get featured in the different magazines. And I know you produce a lot of videos on your site where people can find out about them as well. And we're hoping, we've been talking about doing a ski boot special, and I'm still very keen to do that. We're just trying to work out when we're going to do it and how we're going to fit it in. But listen, we will have that. But I was looking at some US ski reviews, and I came across a term that I had never come across before, frontside skis. Now, maybe it might be obvious, but what are frontside skis? Because I don't think they crop up in UK terminology, do they?
Yeah, and this is one of the, I suppose it's just one of the interesting kind of aspects of skiing, in that there's so many different terms, and it depends where you are in the world as to what terms there are. And, you know, even if you look at run grading, some resorts will have green, blue, red, black. Some will have green, blue, black. Some will, you know, somewhat like in North America, that black diamond, black double diamond. So it can vary where you are in the world. So if we just look at Europe, we use the term on-piste a lot. Now, many will know that, you know, that's a French term, and that's on the groomed terrain. And then off-piste is anything that's off those groomed safe runs. There is a kind of combination run called an itinerary or a ski route, whereby it is patrolled and made safe, but it's not pisted. Now, when you go to North America, it is very different. So they will have their ski resort, and in that area of the resort that the resort is responsible for making safe, they can call that inbounds. And that doesn't just mean the groomed runs. It can be everything in between as well. So the easiest way to think of when we're looking at frontside, you imagine a ski town looking up at a mountain, and all that you can see in front of you is frontside. That's an easy way to, it's more complicated than that, but that's an easy way to get your head around it. And then anything, so all of that front side there within the boundary of the resort would be made safe. You can go skiing on the groomed runs or off them. And then anything beyond that, so if you think of the back side of the mountain or back country, that's what we might normally think of as off-piste skiing.
Perhaps we are so European, despite not being in the EU anymore, that piste skis, everybody understands straight away exactly what that means, whether we're talking about skiing in Italy or Austria or in France. I imagine they probably have après ski in America, but now I'm wondering if they call that something different as well. I mean, you have this thing with translations, and I'm writing stuff, and snow groomers and piste bashers, to me, in the UK, everybody understands what a piste basher is, but not everybody understands what a snow groomer is. You know, those two things. I think Churchill once said that the US and the UK were two countries separated by a common language. And, you know, sometimes those differences, you have to work hard to get through them. Okay, cool. I've got another question for you then. And Mike Greenland, he contacted us via Twitter. And he said, who remembers the Parablock from the 70s. Now, I had these on a certain pair of skis. They were attached to the front of your skis to stop them crossing. They were a little triangle that, you cropped up. Because, at the time, the style in that time was to ski with your skis really tight together like this. It was a nightmare if you did cross them because you'd fall over. I wondered what you thought about that. Do you remember the Parablock? Do you know it?
I had to look this up when you mentioned it to me about a week ago because I had not come across them. And then, like often happens when you disappear down a rabbit hole, you come across all these other things. So there's other brands that had it. And it looks as though, to be honest, it was a bit of a nightmare because, as you say, once you do cross them, if it does happen, you are snookered. There are modern versions. So things like edgy wedgy with it. So basically, it's a little clamp on the front of each ski, connected by, think of it like a stiff rubber hose. And this is great for kids when they're doing their pizza plows, to stop the tips of their skis crossing. To be honest, modern skis are quite different to the old, what we refer to as pencil skis, straight-sided skis. None of these are a true replacement for actually quality instruction. People often think that going and getting a ski lesson can be expensive, but skiing itself isn't the cheapest thing in the world. There are ways, as we've spoken about, go to better value resorts. You can get flights to different destinations that can bring the cost down. But you want to enjoy your time on the hill, and quality instruction, especially at the start of your skiing journey, can make a massive difference. So yeah, that's kind of my thought on that. Yeah, those Parablocks look a bit scary.
Yeah, well, I'll put a photo in the show notes and also a link to the edgy wedgie, which I had to look up because I'd never heard of that before. Gemma, are you familiar with this idea, the Parablock?
I'm pretty sure I had that when I was learning to ski as a kid on Kids Grove dry ski slope in the 80s.
There you go.
The kit I would recommend for kids now is the reins. We've had great success with them, with the kids' dad skiing behind with the kids held up on the reins. That has helped, I think. Maybe it's cheating, but certainly some inventions or innovations are worthwhile. But I'm with you, Al, on instruction. I can never understand it really when people say to me, I went out skiing and I did one day's lessons and then I just did it myself. And, it's got to be such a struggle after that. I know people are sort of like proud, or they think they can do it, or they want to save the money. We think about intermediates who get stuck on the plateau. You don't want to be a beginner and get stuck on the plateau because you're just going to find it so much harder. Maybe you might say, well, that's what people who work in the ski industry would say. But I say it as someone who's skied for a long time, take lessons. That's brilliant, Al. Thanks very much for that. Now, we're just going to come to the close now. I do enjoy all feedback about the show, like Mike's comment, etc., and Jules, who had her question about the episode numbering. So please do contact us via social or by email to theskipodcast@gmail.com. And you can also review us. They're always welcome on Spotify and Apple. Now, I've had so much feedback recently, maybe with all those extra episodes, I'm going to have to hold some of these comments back for episode 102, but I'm just going to read a couple out. Rachel Frisby via Facebook said, I love the episode about La Plagne. I love that resort so much. Joe McHugh said, great podcast, referring to 99 again about La Plagne. He said, about the Vanoise Express link to Les Arcs, if you stay in Montchavin, you can ski a full day in either La Plagne or Les Arcs. The village is one lift away in the morning, and then no extra lifts to be taken in the evening. You just ski back to the village. A traditional village, a quiet, with limited nightlife, but the location makes it a great place to explore the whole Paradiski area. So thanks very much for that tip, Joe. Appreciate that. Richard Sideways on the forum Snowheads enjoyed the special with Warren Smith, and Bob in CH also on Snowhead said, great pod. I didn't know he filmed with Guido Perini. And if you listen to that interview I did with Warren, we went right back, and I'm pretty sure you remember those days, Al, when Warren was producing the kind of Snow Odyssey videos and having the premieres at the Prince Charles Theatre in Leicester Square. Do you remember those?
Yeah, and I do remember the movies with Guido as well. It was happy times.
Yeah, well, they were great. Listen to the podcast. There's a really brilliant anecdote in there from Warren about how we managed to still put on a premiere despite the projector being ruined 5 minutes before the movie was about to start. Finally, I'd like to thank Liam Major, who I think must be working through the podcast chronologically, because he sent me an email saying, hi, Jim. I just wanted to say I've been listening through the podcast series and I'm hooked. You and Iain do a great job. I've only recently developed an interest in skiing. I've started listening through all of your podcasts in anticipation for my first trip away. The magnitude of knowledge I've learned from these podcasts is exceptional, so I can't thank you enough. Well, I've had swapped quite a few emails with Liam now. I thank you so much for that. And Jim's last episode was actually number 56. So that must mean you have at least 99 more episodes to catch up with. I had a quick look and that should take you at least up until your ski holiday itself, even if you're going in early December. You should have caught up by number 102, which is scheduled for the 10th of October. And listener, you don't need to listen to every episode we have, but don't forget, we do have 155 you can catch up on. And normally every week, 75 to 100 of those get listened to. So we're going to come to the close now. You can follow me at Skipedia on social media and the podcast at The Ski Podcast. But for now, I would like to thank Les Trois for sponsoring the Ski Podcast and thank my guest today, Gemma. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
And Al, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Iain. It's always fun.
And finally, listener, thank you for joining us. And until next time, goodbye.